The deal no human should ever make. Jack sat quietly in the dark hospital room, watching his little sister sleep. Her breathing was slow. Machines beaked around her. Doctors had told him the truth last week. Without the surgery, she had only a few months to live. The cost, more than he could ever earn in 10 years. Jack had no family left. His parents were gone. His sister, Lily, was all he had. And now she was slipping away. Then the message came. It arrived on his old tablet. No name, just glowing letters. Marry her. You'll be paid enough to save her. You leave tonight. Jack stared at the message. At first, he thought it was a joke, but when he tapped the link, it showed a contract. A real one. Legal. Clean. Strange, but real. He read the words slowly. One human male. One alien bride. No questions. No backing out. At the end, the promise. Payment. 3 million Earth credits. Immediate. Sister's treatment. Fully covered. Jack's hand shook. Was this a trap? Was he selling his soul? But then he looked at Lily. And he said yes. 2 days later, Jack stood in a glowing white room. The walls hummed. The air felt heavy, like it wasn't made for humans. A tall creature in a black uniform handed him a breathing patch. Put it on, the alien said. You're not on Earth anymore. Jack placed the patch on his neck. Suddenly, he could breathe easier. He stepped through a door and saw the stars, millions of them, hanging outside a glass window. He was on a ship, flying far away from everything he knew. His new home was called Zerine, a cold planet with silver skies and giant floating towers. The people were tall, pale, and emotionless. They moved like machines, spoke with flat voices, and never smiled. He had been given new clothes. Clean, plain, black. A guard showed him a room and told him to wait. That's where he met her. Elira. She entered like a shadow. Her skin was soft blue, her hair silvered like snow, and her eyes empty. Not cruel, not kind. Just blank. You are the human, she said. Her voice was calm, almost bored. Jack nodded. Yes, Jack. I am Elira. You will marry me tomorrow. No nice to meet you. No smile. No warmth. Just cold facts. Jack didn't know what to say. Why me? She looked at him. You were chosen. That's all you need to know. He wanted to ask more, but something told him not to. The next day, the wedding happened. It wasn't like anything Jack imagined. No music, no family, just a room with lights and a stone platform. Elira stood beside him, still and silent. A tall alien leader spoke in a language Jack didn't understand. Then he said in English, "You are now joined." And that was it. No kiss, no rings, no celebration. Jack was led to their shared room. It was big but cold, with metal walls, and one large bed in the center. He sat at the edge, confused. Elira stood by the window, looking outside, her back to him. Jack tried to break the silence. On Earth, he said, we have music at weddings. Dancing. Cake. I do not dance, she replied. I do not eat cake. Jack smiled a little. That's sad. Cake is great. She turned her head slightly. You find this funny? Jack looked at her. Not funny, just strange. Everything here feels cold. Cold is safe, she said. Emotion is dangerous. He raised an eyebrow. Says who? Our laws. Jack stood up, walked closer. Do you even know what a joke is? No. He chuckled. Okay, let me try one. Just one. Elira faced him. You may try, but it will not work. Jack grinned. Why don't aliens eat clowns? She blinked. What is a clown? Never mind. Punchlines still good, because they taste funny. There was silence. And then, something strange happened. Alira's eyes flickered. Her lips trembled. And for the first time, she smiled. Just a little. Then suddenly, her body stiffened. Her smile vanished. She stepped back, her skin glowing faint blue. "You shouldn't have done that," she whispered. "Why not?" Jack asked, confused. No human was ever supposed to do that. She turned away, trembling. Jack stood frozen. What had he just done? The smile that broke the law. Jack couldn't sleep. He lay on the cold, silver bed, staring at the ceiling. The glowing lines above hummed softly. His thoughts ran in circles. What had just happened? Why did Alira react like that to a simple smile? Why was a joke so dangerous? She hadn't spoken a word since. After whispering, no human was ever supposed to do that. She had turned away and stood silently by the window for hours. Her body had stopped glowing, but she still looked shaken. Jack sat up. "Alira." She didn't answer. He stood and walked to her side. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to upset you. I just wanted to break the silence." Still nothing. But then, quietly, she whispered, "Where did you learn that thing? That expression with your mouth?" "You mean?" Smiling. She nodded slowly. Jack scratched his head. "It's normal on Earth. We smile when we're happy, when something is funny, when we're nervous, sometimes even when we're scared." She turned toward him, her eyes wide, almost afraid. "On Zareen, we do not smile. Smiles were banned long ago." Jack frowned. "Why?" She hesitated, then said, "Because they started a war." The next morning, Jack woke to a loud knock. The door slid open without warning. Two tall Zareen guards entered. Their faces, like everyone else's, were blank and emotionless. "You are summoned," one of them said. "Where?" Jack asked. They didn't answer. They just turned and began walking. Jack followed, throwing on his black jacket. Alira stood by the door. She didn't move or speak, but her eyes met his for just a second. A warning was in them. Something was wrong. They led Jack to a high tower with sharp walls and no windows. Inside was a single round room with a glowing floor. At the center stood an old Zareen with deep silver lines on his face and strange wires attached to his head. He spoke slowly. "You made her smile." Jack blinked. "Excuse me." "Lady Alira. She smiled last night. We felt it." "You felt it?" "Our kind is connected. When emotion flows, it sends waves. It disrupts our balance." Jack looked around. "Is that bad?" "Yes," the elder said flatly. "Emotion is chaos. Chaos leads to war. Long ago, feelings destroyed our world. We learned to remove them. We became peaceful." Jack crossed his arms. "Peaceful or controlled?" The elder narrowed his glowing eyes. "Be careful, human. You are here under contract. Do not forget your place." Later that day, Jack returned to his room. Alira was waiting. "They questioned me," he said. She nodded. "They always do." He sat down. "They said emotions started a war. Is that true?" Alira walked to a shelf and pulled out a small black cube. She touched it, and a hologram appeared. Images of fire, flying ships, crying children. "A long time ago, Zareen were emotional beings. We laughed. We loved. But when we lost control, entire cities burned." Jack looked at the images. "So your people erased emotions to stop another war?" "Yes. Through science, we removed the feelings from our minds. We became logical, efficient, safe." Jack frowned, but not happy. Alira looked away. "Happiness is a myth." Jack stood and gently held her hand. "Then why did you smile last night?" She didn't answer. That evening, Jack couldn't stop thinking about the past. Something didn't sit right with him. If emotions were so dangerous, why had they left a part of that history behind? Why did Alira still have a childhood photo in her drawer, a photo where she smiled? He waited until Alira went into the bathing chamber. Then he quietly opened her desk. The photo was still there. A little girl, Alira, years ago, laughing and holding a small glowing flower. Next to her, a tall man was smiling too. Was it her father? Suddenly, Jack noticed something strange behind the photo. A second photo, hidden. This one was different. It showed Alira standing in front of a giant silver gate, surrounded by strange symbols, and a group of people with bright eyes and colorful robes. They didn't look like Zareen, but they didn't look human either. Before Jack could study it more, he heard a soft click behind him. He turned. Alira was standing there. She had seen everything. Her face was still calm, but her hands were shaking. "You weren't supposed to see that," she said quietly. "Who are they?" Jack asked. "They're not like the others." They were smiling. She didn't answer. She walked slowly to him, took the photo, and stared at it for a long time. Then she whispered, "I was one of them. Long ago." That night, Jack couldn't sleep again. Too many questions filled his head. What had Alira meant? Who were they? Was she hiding something even deeper than just old photos? As he lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, something moved. A shadow passed near the door. Jack sat up. Alira, but she was still asleep. He walked slowly toward the door. It was slightly open. He peeked outside and saw a figure in a black cloak running down the hallway. Something had been slipped under their door. A note. Jack picked it up. It wasn't paper. It was made of glowing threads, woven into words. "Do not make her remember, or they will erase you both." His heart pounded. What had he stepped into? Why was smiling dangerous? And who was trying to stop Alira from remembering her past? Secrets buried in the cold. Jack read the glowing message again, heart racing. "Do not make her remember, or they will erase you both." The letters faded after a few seconds, vanishing into the strange material of the note. He looked out into the hallway, but the cloaked figure was already gone, silent as smoke. He stood frozen for a long moment. Erase. What did that mean? Were they talking about memory? Or something worse? Jack turned and looked at Alira. She was still asleep, curled on the far side of the bed, face turned toward the wall. Her body glowed slightly in the dim light. Peaceful, beautiful, sad. Something deep inside told Jack the warning was real. And that time was running out. The next morning, Jack tried to act normal. But his thoughts kept spinning. At breakfast, he barely touched the strange glowing fruit on his plate. Across from him, Alira sat quietly, sipping from a silver cup. She didn't mention the photo. She didn't mention the note. But her eyes kept glancing toward Jack, like she knew he had questions, and she wasn't ready to answer. Later that day, Jack walked alone through the palace. The guards didn't stop him anymore. He was Alira's husband now, even if the marriage felt more like a contract than a real connection. He wandered into a library made of crystal walls. The books weren't paper. They were small metal cubes that played images and sound when touched. He found one about Zareen history. What he saw didn't surprise him. It confirmed what Alira had told him before. Long ago, Zareen were emotional beings. They had laughter, art, music. But after a great war nearly destroyed their cities, the leaders removed emotion from society. Scientists developed mind suppressors, devices that blocked feelings. Peace returned, but something was lost. Jack paused the cube. He looked out the tall crystal window. This world, it was clean, orderly, but it didn't feel alive. That night, Jack finally decided to speak. As he and Alira sat by the window, watching silver birds fly across the glowing sky, he turned to her. "Alira," he said softly, "what happened to you?" She didn't move. "I saw the second photo," he continued. "The people in it, they looked different. Happy. You were with them. You smiled." Silence. Jack leaned forward. "Were you part of something else? Before all this?" She took a deep breath, slow and careful. I was. Jack's eyes widened. Then why? Because it was taken from me. She turned to face him. Years ago, I joined a hidden group. A rebellion. We believed emotions were not the enemy. That they were part of life. We lived in secret, shared stories, laughed, cried. We believed feelings made us strong. What happened? Jack asked, heart heavy. They found us. Her voice dropped. The government captured everyone. They used memory wipe technology. Suppressors. Brain cleaning. Most of my memories were erased, but something stayed, deep inside. She touched her chest. Something they couldn't remove. Jack was quiet for a long time. Then he asked, and the wedding? Was it part of their plan? Yes, she said. They chose a human husband not to reward you, but to test me, to see if emotions would rise again. Jack stood slowly. So I was bait. Yes. He laughed bitterly. Great. Elira stood too. She stepped closer. But I'm glad it was you. Jack blinked. She looked at him, not with cold eyes this time, but with warmth. You reminded me what it feels like to care. Later that night, Jack couldn't sleep again. His mind replayed Elira's words, her story, her pain. Then he noticed something. A soft humming sound under the bed. He crouched down and saw a blinking blue light. Carefully, he pulled out a small black box, no bigger than his hand. It had tiny wires connected to the floor and a glowing symbol on top. Jack stared at it. A mind suppressor. It had been in their room the whole time. No wonder Elira struggled to feel. No wonder her memories kept slipping away. Jack stood, heart pounding. He grabbed a metal object from the desk, a sharp tool used to open energy panels, and with one quick motion, he smashed the device. Sparks flew. The room lights flickered, and alarms began to wail. Red lights flashed in the hallway. Elira sat up instantly. What did you do? I destroyed it, Jack said. The mind suppressor under our bed. That's why you couldn't remember. Elira's eyes filled with light. For a second, Jack thought she would yell. But instead she smiled. Not small this time. A real smile. And then her body began to glow, bright and warm. She gasped, stepping back. Jack, I remember more. Suddenly, the door burst open. Guards entered, weapons ready. But Elira raised her hand. And the air changed. The guards froze, confused. They looked around like waking from a dream. One of them dropped his weapon. Elira turned to Jack. We have to run. Now. Where? He asked. She walked to the wall and touched a glowing panel. A secret passage opened. To the ruins, she said. The last place they haven't touched. My people left something behind. If we can reach it, maybe we can free everyone. Jack looked at her, then back at the guards, still frozen in confusion. Let's go, he said. They ran through long underground halls. The passage was cold, dark, and lined with old symbols Jack couldn't read. Elira moved quickly, like she'd been here before, like her memories were coming back faster now. Finally, they reached a large stone door covered in ancient markings. Elira placed her hand on the center. The door glowed, then opened. Inside was a massive chamber. Broken statues, dusty machines, glowing vines wrapped around old walls. In the middle, a tall pillar rose from the floor, and on it, a small, blinking light, a memory crystal. Elira stepped forward. This is my past, she said softly, and maybe our future. Escape from the frozen heart. Jack had never seen anything like the room before. It felt ancient, older than Earth, older than Zerine history. The air inside was cold and dry, filled with soft echoes, as if the walls remembered every whisper, every secret. Elira stood at the center of the chamber, her glowing blue hand resting gently on the small blinking crystal. Her eyes were closed, her breathing steady. And then, the room came alive. The walls shimmered. Symbols began to move. A beam of soft light rose from the crystal and wrapped around her like a ribbon. Jack stepped back as the floor trembled slightly beneath his feet. Then he heard a voice. Not in his ears, but inside his mind. If you are hearing this, I am gone, but my memories live on. The voice was soft, a woman's, warm, familiar. Alira's eyes opened. That's my mother's voice, she whispered. The light shifted and projected an image above the crystal. A tall, elegant Zerine woman stood smiling, surrounded by laughing children. They weren't emotionless like the ones Jack had seen. They were alive, joyful, full of feeling. The woman began to speak. We believed emotion was a gift, not a curse. But they feared it, so they hunted us, erased us, silenced our joy. If you're watching this, you are the last. Do not let them kill the heart of our people. Jack felt something tighten in his chest. Alira's eyes filled with tears, actual tears. She whispered, they told me she abandoned me, that she was dangerous. But she was trying to save us all. Suddenly, the floor shook again, harder this time. A loud alarm blared somewhere deep in the halls above. Jack and Alira turned toward the entrance. They found us, she said. They raced back down the corridor. The secret passage that had once welcomed them now felt like a trap. Shadows moved behind them. Loud metallic footsteps echoed down the halls. Guards were coming. Jack held Alira's hand tight as they ran, twisting through old stone halls filled with glowing roots and forgotten tech. Suddenly, Alira stopped. She knelt near a wall and began tracing her fingers across strange carvings. The symbols lit up beneath her touch. What are you doing? Jack asked. There's another way out, she said. My mother used to bring me here. There's a tunnel under the city, one that leads to the ancient garden. Before Jack could answer, a wall to their right slid open, revealing a narrow spiral staircase. They didn't hesitate. They ran down, deeper and deeper, until the sounds of guards faded behind them. The tunnel was tight and damp, with glowing moss on the walls. It looked untouched for decades, maybe longer. As they walked, Jack noticed something strange. The deeper they went, the warmer the air became. And the walls began to change, from stone to smooth, polished glass. Finally, they'd reached a large underground dome. Inside, everything was green. A hidden garden. Real trees. Flowers. A small pool of glowing water. Birds with silver feathers flew in lazy circles above. Jack couldn't believe it. It's beautiful, he whispered. This is the last free place on Zerine, Alira said. The last place where emotion still lives. It's protected by old energy fields. They can't track us here. Jack looked around. This is proof. Your people didn't destroy themselves with emotion. They lived with it. Alira nodded. The truth was buried, replaced with fear. She walked to the pool and looked at her reflection. Then she said something that shocked Jack. I'm afraid. He walked over. Of what? Of what comes next. They sat beneath a tree, resting for the first time in hours. Jack reached into his pocket and pulled out something small. A tiny music player, old, earth-made, a gift from his sister before she got sick. He clicked a button. Soft piano music filled the air. Alira turned to him, eyes wide. What is that? Music, Jack smiled. We listen to it when we feel things too big for words. Alira listened. She closed her eyes. And then something broke inside her. She began to cry. Not just tears, but deep, full-body sobs. Her shoulders shook. Her hands covered her face. Jack didn't speak. He just held her. Minutes passed. Then she looked up at him. I remember everything now. She told him the full truth. Her mother had led a group called the Heart Keepers, Zerine, who believed emotion was sacred. They had hidden in the ancient ruins, protected by old tech, and taught their children to feel, to love, to laugh. Elira had been one of them. But someone betrayed them. The government attacked, wiped their minds, and scattered the survivors. Elira was one of the few children they kept alive, to study. They thought if they erased my memories, they could control me, she said. But feelings are not just in the mind. They live in the soul. Jack looked at her. So what now? We awaken them, she said. All of them. They returned to the memory crystal chamber. This time, Elira carried the crystal in her hand. The guards were still searching the upper halls, unaware of the tunnel. Inside the chamber, Elira placed the crystal on the pillar again. But this time, she touched the ancient controls Jack hadn't seen before, symbols hidden behind the pillar itself. Each crystal, she explained, contains not just memories, but emotional energy. Real feeling. It can be shared. She pressed her hand to the pillar. The crystal glowed, and the room exploded with light. Images, sounds, laughter, music, all flowed through the air. It was like standing in the middle of a living dream. Then, one by one, other crystals around the room began to glow. Hundreds of them. Elira turned to Jack, her face calm, but full of light. We're not just saving ourselves, she said. We're waking the world. Far above, in the silver towers of the Zareen capital, something strange began to happen. Citizens paused. They felt something warm, something deep inside. Some touched their faces as tears fell, for no reason they could explain. Others heard echoes of laughter in their minds. The emotional web had been reactivated, and the government knew something was wrong. Far away, a cold voice whispered in the shadows. It has begun. The guardian of emotion. The room glowed with light and memory. Hundreds of crystals lit up around Jack and Elira. They pulsed like heartbeats, sending waves of warmth and color into the air. Faces appeared, laughing, crying, hugging. Emotions once erased now danced in the space around them. Jack stood still, eyes wide. It felt like standing inside someone's soul. Elira walked slowly through the chamber. As she moved, the crystals followed her with gentle waves of light, as if recognizing her. Then the ground began to shake, low at first, then stronger. Jack grabbed the edge of the pillar. What's happening? Elira's eyes widened. The crystals are waking the guardian. Jack blinked. Guardian? Before she could answer, the far wall of the chamber split open. Stone cracked. Dust flew. A deep, echoing hum filled the room. And then, it stepped out. The guardian was massive. Not like a robot. Not like a monster. It looked like a being made of light and stone, taller than any living thing Jack had ever seen. Its face was smooth, its body covered in glowing lines that pulsed like veins. Its eyes, two soft orbs of gold, locked onto Elira. It spoke, not with sound, but with thoughts. Who awakens the heart of Zareen? Jack felt the voice in his chest, like a vibration in his bones. Elira stood tall, her voice steady. I am Elira of the Heart Keepers, daughter of Mira. I call on you to protect what remains. The guardian looked at her for a long moment, then turned to Jack. You are human. Jack nodded slowly. Yeah, that's me. You carry emotion. You share it freely. You are dangerous, but pure. Jack scratched his head. Thanks, I think. The guardian raised one massive hand. Light flowed from its fingers. Images formed in the air of the old Zareen world before the silence, before the mind suppression. Emotion was once our strength, the guardian said, but we feared pain. So we buried joy along with sorrow. We became shadows. It looked at Elira. But you chose to remember. Elira stepped forward. And we want to help others do the same. We want to free them. The guardian stood still for a long time. Then, slowly, it knelt. Its voice filled the chamber. Then I shall protect you and guide you. But beware, the emotionless king has already awakened. Far above, in the capital, the High Council met in silence, except for one. The man at the center wore silver robes and a face like carved ice. His name was King Orin, once a scientist, now a ruler. Cold, brilliant, cruel. He stood before a giant screen showing the city. Citizens were behaving strangely, crying, laughing, some even dancing in the streets. Emotional energy was returning. He slammed his fist on the control panel. This infection must be purged. A voice behind him whispered, "It's Elira. She's broken containment." The king didn't blink. Send the enforcers. Lock down the cities. And find the human. He turned toward the darkness. And if they awaken the guardian, he whispered, I will erase every memory left on this cursed planet. Back underground, the guardian stood and opened a hidden chamber behind the crystal platform. Inside were strange items, ancient tech, glowing orbs, and a map of Zareen with hidden pathways marked in gold. Jack picked up one of the orbs. It pulsed in his hand. What is this? Emotional amplifier, the guardian said. It allows those nearby to feel truth. It cannot be faked. Jack smiled. That would be useful on Earth. Elira picked up the map. These tunnels go everywhere. We could reach the outer zones. Wake more crystals. Jack's eyes lit up. A network. A real one. We could reach everyone. Suddenly, alarms echoed down the tunnel. Elira turned to the Guardian. They found us. The Guardian stepped forward, eyes glowing. Then I must hold them here. Go, spread the light. Remind them who they are. Jack hesitated. You'll be okay. I was born to protect. I will not fall easily. Elira and Jack nodded, then ran down the next tunnel, map in hand, and the amplifier orb tucked safely in Jack's jacket. Behind them, the Guardian raised both arms, and the entire chamber began to shift, walls closing, shields activating, and ancient weapons humming to life. They emerged hours later in the outer district, a place Jack had never seen before. Here, the buildings were older, cracked, and covered in vines. The people looked tired, hollow. But when Jack and Elira walked into the open square, something amazing happened. Elira held up the orb. It glowed. And people began to feel. Eyes widened. Mouths trembled. One child began to laugh, truly laugh, for the first time in her life. Others fell to their knees, crying. Some held each other like they hadn't touched in years. Elira's voice rang out across the square. You have been told emotions are poison, but they are the soul of who you are. You were not born to be cold. You were born to feel. The emotional waves spread faster than they expected. Across the planet, more crystals activated. More people woke up. More memories returned. But so did the danger. Back in the capital, King Orin stood watching the spread of emotion on his central screen. His hand hovered over a red button. A failsafe. Something forbidden. A weapon that could reset the entire emotional grid. One of his advisors spoke, nervous. But sire, if you activate it, the cost. I will not lose this world to weakness, Orin said coldly. Let them cry. Let them love. And then, let them burn. He pressed the button. In the outer zone, Jack felt it first. A cold wind, a sharp pain in his head. Elira fell to her knees. It's the emotional white protocol, she gasped. They're trying to erase us again. Jack looked at the people, now smiling, hugging, and suddenly gripping their heads in pain. No, he whispered, not again. Then he remembered the orb. He pulled it out. It glowed brighter than ever. He held it up high, and he spoke from his heart. You can feel this. You know what's real. Don't let them take it again. Hold on, just a little longer. Elira reached up, took his hand, and added her voice. You are Zareen. You are not machines. You are family. You are love. You are memory. The orb burst with light. A wave spread, and the signal trying to erase them broke. In a far-off lab, sparks flew. Screens shattered. The wipe signal collapsed. King Orin screamed in fury. Back in the square, people rose slowly. And then, they smiled. Really smiled. Jack looked at Alara, her hand still in his. You didn't just save them, he whispered. You saved yourself too. Alara leaned forward, forehead resting against his. Not alone, she said. Never again. Earth's forgotten promise. The world of Zareen had begun to wake up. Across the cities, villages, and silver towers, emotion flowed like a forgotten river returning to its path. Smiles broke through old silence. Tears cleansed years of numbness. Laughter echoed where it hadn't been heard in generations. But peace wasn't guaranteed. And far away, something even deeper was about to surface. Something older. Something from Earth. Jack sat with Alara near the edge of a glowing waterfall in the outer district. The people they helped were still nearby, hugging, singing, discovering joy for the first time. The emotional amplifier had done its work, and Alara had become a symbol of hope. But Jack couldn't stop thinking about one thing. The Guardian had said something before they left. This is not just your fight. Earth once made a promise to us, and then forgot. Jack stared at the rippling water. What did he mean? He asked aloud. Alara, who sat beside him, nodded slowly. I've been wondering the same. She pulled the ancient map from her coat. There's a mark here, she said, pointing to a glowing blue circle on the lower corner. It says, Unity Vault, Origin Protocol. Jack's eyes narrowed. Sounds important. She looked at him. It's underground, deep beneath the Great Archive. Jack stood up. Then that's where we go. The Great Archive was once a museum of history, now abandoned and sealed by the Emotionless Council. The entrance stood hidden behind layers of stone and metal, deep in the silent capital. Jack and Alara approached at night, using the ancient tunnels. The city above was quiet, too quiet. Word of the emotional wave had reached the palace. They knew someone had started it. But no one had seen Jack or Alara since the Guardian woke. Inside the archive, dust covered everything. The shelves were broken. The air was heavy, and yet it felt alive. As they moved deeper, the air grew warmer. Symbols lit up on the walls as Alara passed. It recognizes you, Jack said softly. She nodded. My blood remembers. At the lowest level, they found the vault. A large door, shaped like a spiral, sealed shut. On the center, a symbol neither of them had seen before, half serene, half earth. Jack stepped forward. That's a human language. He reached out, touched the symbol. The door responded instantly. It opened with a soft hiss. Inside was darkness. And then, a voice. Welcome. Origin Protocol unlocked. The room inside was made of smooth black glass, lined with silver vines. In the center floated a cube, spinning slowly. Around it, tiny lights danced like stars. Alara approached carefully. It's a memory server, very old. Jack looked around. But why is Earth's language here? The cube lit up, and a hologram formed. A man appeared, human, dressed in a simple space uniform. His voice was tired, but kind. My name is Dr. Ilias Vorn. Earth year, 2231. If you are seeing this, then the promise was broken. Jack leaned closer, stunned. The man continued. Over 200 years ago, Earth made contact with the Zareen. Back then, they were emotional, vibrant, powerful. We shared knowledge, culture, dreams. We saw them as family. But something went wrong. A Zareen rebel group tried to use emotional energy as a weapon. Earth's leaders panicked. They offered a solution: remove emotion and prevent war. In exchange, they gave technology to suppress feelings. The council accepted. Jack's mouth went dry. No. Alira's eyes filled with tears. But not all Zareen agreed. The hologram said. A few resisted. One was a woman named Mira. She said, "Emotion is not the enemy. Fear is." I believed her. I loved her. Jack turned to Alira. "Mira was your mother." Alira covered her mouth. The truth crashed down on her like a wave. "But Earth betrayed her," Dr. Elias said. "I was ordered to stop helping the rebels. I refused. I stayed here, hidden, and helped her preserve the memory crystals. I recorded this in the vault, so if the world ever woke up again, they'd know the truth." The cube flickered. "If you are human, and you hear this, I beg you, do better than we did. Keep your promise. Protect what we destroyed." Then the cube went dark. Silence filled the vault. Jack sat down slowly, stunned. We gave them the tools to erase themselves. Alira knelt beside him. And now we have to help them feel again. Suddenly, a loud bang echoed above. Voices, heavy boots, guards. They had been found. Alira grabbed the cube. "We can't let them take this." Jack looked around. "Back door." She nodded. "Follow me." They ran through a narrow passage behind the vault, the walls shaking as guards fired stun pulses into the stone. They barely made it out, escaping through a tunnel and climbing into a sewer tunnel that led far from the city. Hours later, they emerged in the highlands, far from buildings and machines. The stars above were clear, the night air cold. They sat beneath a tree that had somehow survived the ages. Alira held the cube tightly in her lap. Jack broke the silence. "We can share this. The message. Let everyone hear the truth." Alira nodded. "We need one final signal. A message so strong that it touches every Zareen." Jack looked up at the stars. "And then what?" Alira turned to him, voice soft. "Then we make a new promise." The next day, they returned to the Guardian. The chamber was cracked from battle, but still standing. The Guardian, though wounded, was waiting. They showed it the cube. The Guardian touched it with glowing fingers. The memory played again, this time on every wall. Then the Guardian said, "If you wish to send this truth, there is only one place strong enough. The sky mirror." Alira gasped. "That's sacred ground." Jack stood. "Then that's where we go." The sky mirror was the highest point on Zareen, a crystal mountain that touched the clouds. Once a temple of emotion, now sealed for centuries. It would not be easy to reach. But Jack and Alira had come too far to stop now. They gathered allies, those they had helped, those who had remembered. And as one, they moved toward the mountain, toward the final signal, toward the final stand. Above them, in his cold palace, King Orin watched it all unfold. His city slipping, his people waking, his grip weakening. He turned to his scientists. "Prepare the void weapon," he said. "If they reach the sky mirror, we erase the entire region. But, Your Highness, do it." Far below, Jack and Alira climbed, hand in hand. He looked at her. "You were forced to marry me for money." She smiled gently. "And you gave me back everything I didn't know I had lost." Jack held up the cube. "For Earth, for Zareen, for your mother." Alira nodded. "For us. The wedding that saved a world." The wind howled at the top of the world. Jack stood near the edge of the sky mirror, a shining crystal platform carved into the mountain's peak. It reflected the stars, the clouds, and the hopes of a planet that was finally waking up. Beside him stood Alira, calm and radiant, wrapped in white and silver robes from the old temple. Her eyes glowed softly, not from Zareen energy, but from something much older. Emotion. Behind them, hundreds of Zareens stood in silence. Men, women, children, gathered from cities and villages across the planet. They had come to witness the moment they never thought possible. A memory, lost for generations, was about to return, and the last truth was about to be told. Elira held the ancient cube in both hands. The Guardian had helped them repair the Sky Mirror's main beacon, an ancient signal platform that once sent emotional energy across the world. Now it would be their voice. She looked at Jack, and he gave her a small nod. Elira stepped forward. The wind grew still. The sky seemed to wait. She placed the cube on the signal pedestal. The mountain lit up in soft waves of color: blue, violet, gold. A voice echoed across the entire planet. "My name is Elira of the Heartkeepers, daughter of Mira. I was made to forget, but I remember now." Faces across Zerine turned toward the sky. Everyone listened. "You were told that emotions are dangerous. That feeling makes you weak." But they lied. Emotion is strength. It's love. It's truth. The message from Earth's Dr. Elias Vorn began to play, projected across every screen, every tower, every home. Citizens saw the truth. Earth's betrayal. The Council's lie. The rebellion that had tried to save them all. And the girl who had been forced to forget her own mother. Tears fell freely across the world. Some cried from sorrow. Others cried from joy. Jack watched it all, heart full. But something was wrong. He turned toward the sky and saw a light falling. No, not falling. Coming. A ship. Large, dark, fast. It was King Orin's void weapon. A final command. A final attempt to silence the truth. Elira saw it too. "He's going to destroy the mountain." The Guardian's voice boomed through the mountain's heart. "The weapon cannot be stopped, but the memory can be saved. A final surge must come from two hearts, joined by truth." Jack's eyes widened. A surge. Elira turned to him. The mountain shook. Lightning sparked from the edges. She stepped closer. "Jack," she whispered, "do you trust me?" "With everything." "Then, marry me. For real this time." He blinked. "Now." She smiled. "Emotion created this mountain. A wedding born from true love will awaken its last power. That's how the Heartkeepers built it." Jack laughed through the fear. "Well, I did promise you cake someday." Elira reached out her hand. Jack took it, and the light exploded around them. The wind calmed. The sky turned silver. All across Zerine, the people felt something warm in their chest. And then they saw it, projected high above the clouds. A wedding, but not like before. Not cold, not quiet, not forced. Jack stood before Elira, eyes full of awe. He spoke first. "I came here for money. I stayed for a reason I didn't understand. But now I do. I love you. I love your strength, your story, your heart." Elira smiled. "I was born into silence, but you gave me my voice, my past, my future. I don't want a world without you. Not anymore." They touched foreheads, and the mountain pulsed. Far above, the void weapon locked its target. Orin stood in his command deck, face tight with rage. Fire. The cannon roared. A beam of energy raced toward the mountain. But it never landed. The sky mirror shone with light. And then it shattered. But not in destruction. It became energy. A pure wave of emotion that spread across the planet like a sunrise. Every citizen felt it. Every guard dropped their weapon. Every screen went dark, then turned to soft golden light. The void weapon was erased midair, its systems overloaded with emotional force. Orin screamed, but no one was listening anymore. Jack and Elira floated gently down from the mountain, wrapped in light. The people cheered. The Guardian bowed. The world breathed, and cried, and laughed. Weeks passed. The government collapsed peacefully. The council resigned. A new age began, one where emotion was not erased but embraced. Zerine began rebuilding what had been lost for centuries. Art, music, family, love. Jack stayed. Not because of the money, but because Zareen had become his home. Alira became a leader, not by control, but by compassion. Together, they traveled across cities, waking crystals, telling stories, sharing feelings. The cube was placed in a museum, and the sky mirror became sacred again. One day, Jack received a message from Earth. His sister, Lily, had made a full recovery. The surgery had worked. She was asking for him. Alira smiled when he told her. "You should go," she said gently. "She's your home too." Jack looked torn. "I don't want to leave you." "You're not," she said. "You're just sharing your heart with someone who loves you." Jack leaned in, touched her cheek. "I'll be back." "I know." They kissed, and the wind carried it across the stars. Jack returned to Earth for a time. He told Lily everything. About Zareen, about the wedding, about Alira. She laughed. She cried. She hugged him so tight he could barely breathe. He stayed for a few months. Then, one day, he looked at the stars. And he knew. It was time to go home. When he stepped off the ship, Alira was waiting. No guards, no palace, just her. Barefoot in the grass, flowers in her hair. She smiled. "You came back." Jack grinned. "Told you I would." And then, without waiting, he kissed her. The story spread across stars, of a man who was forced to marry a stranger for money, and gave her the one thing no one else could, a reason to feel again.